Hey everyone, welcome back to FSi DFS, looking at the 8-game early slate on DraftKings. We are also going to be covering the 8-game night slate, or 9-game night slate. Mega Ruler is going to be having that one in a whole separate video, so whenever you're researching for that, go ahead and go find his video. But for now, just the early slate on this one. No weather concerns that we have to really be paying attention to. The main weather thing I would say is the Chicago game against Minnesota. Strong winds blowing out, around 15 to 20 miles an hour. So a little bit of a boost to the bats, but still I think the chalk SP2 in cash games is going to be coming from this game. But we got the rankings, the sheet, all that stuff. We'll go over it, and yeah, let's just take a look. So, high salary, I'm always putting in salary here now. High salary tier pitchers, it's going to be Wheeler in my rankings here. Wheeler, then Sale, Eflin, and Ashcraft. Wheeler, he hit the 11K mark. He's the first pitcher to hit 11,000 so far over the course of the year. He is facing the Mike Troutless Angels. If you haven't seen by now, Mike Trout, he's going to have knee surgery. He's going to be out for quite some time, and now this Angels offense looks just even more depleted than they've already been. Now, Joe Adell, he's looked pretty solid for a week or so, but still, that's not enough to cover what Wheeler is capable of, and I think you almost have to stomach the price tag in cash games especially, just because he is such a dominant fantasy point producer. He's like a workhorse. He loves going, 100 pitches. I feel like he's one of the few true workhorses that we still have left in the league. Now, in cash, I kind of look towards that like 2.5x salary to hit their value. So at 11K, I'm kind of hoping Wheeler gets at least 26 DK points, and he's more than capable of getting that. You can see he's averaging almost 24 DK points, or 25 DK points on the season so far. He's mowed them down pretty much every team that he faces. Now he's facing against Mike Troutless Angels team. Chris Sale, right after that, he's looked very solid. I thought, maybe he might struggle a little bit against the Guardians last time out. Proved me wrong. He was absolutely dominant. 6 strikeouts, only 2 hits against, which is quite impressive. Sale, he's got a nice matchup here facing off against Seattle. Seattle is a higher strikeout team in the entire league. They strike out a lot more against left-handed pitching, but they're still a top 10 strikeout team in terms of they strike out the most, top 10 against left-handed pitching as well. So I'm going to have interest in Sale there. I could see maybe a case where you go down from Wheeler to Sale if you need that $1,200, but I think it's not the greatest idea. Still try to get Wheeler in there if you can. As far as Ashcraft and Eflin, I cannot separate these guys really at all. Eflin and Ashcraft, very similar strikeout rates so far this season, at like 20.9 and like 21.1. So very similar strikeout rates, very similar walk rates between these two pitchers as well. They both are facing off against teams who are very similar in their strikeout rates, in their WRC plus, in terms of their WOBA against the pitch hand. So there's really not much separating these two guys. In my opinion, I did put Eflin over Ashcraft just because I feel like I just trust him more. He's also $300 cheaper, but regardless, I don't think that anybody's going to be playing either of these pitchers except in GPP and tournaments. Going into the next tier, excuse me, going into the next tier of pitchers, this is where the chalk SP2 is going to be, in my opinion. Bailey Ober against the White Sox. He's still too cheap. I don't know how many games he has to go through before DK starts to put him up where he should be. He had that just absolutely disastrous season opener start for him against Kansas City. -17 DK points, and the algorithm kind of got broken with him. But we've been targeting him every single time, and it's paid off every single time and then some. So he's up to 7.8K now, which is getting a little bit better, but he's still facing off against the White Sox, and he's going to be the guy you're going to be putting in that SP2 slot. So if you do a Wheeler-Ober combination in cash, you're looking at around 4K remaining for the rest of your bats. So cheap bats value is going to be is going to have to be found. And spoiler alert, it's Minnesota again. Pittsburgh, though, and Detroit, I really do like those teams as well in terms of the bats, but we'll talk about that later on in the video here. After Ober, we're going to go with Lugo and his upside against Toronto, and his strikeout upside essentially is what I'm targeting. Musgrove, he's got a tough matchup against Cincinnati, but he's also got a nice matchup in terms of strikeout rate. Cincinnati, second highest strikeout rate in the entire league against right-handed pitching. So maybe Musgrove can get out of some jams, which he's inevitably going to be getting in. This Cincinnati team is just way too talented, and Musgrove honestly has looked not so great throughout the course of the season here, but still, maybe he's going to be able to generate a bunch of strikeouts, get back up into that 6, 7, 8 strikeout rate kind of game, and if he can do that, he's going to be able to get out of some jams. When he has been able to do that, it's gone great. Almost 25 DK points against St. Louis. Really the big thing with Musgrove is, can he keep the ball in the park? Home runs have been a big issue for him throughout the course of the season. And Cincinnati, they got a lot of pop in their bats. I think that he's more of a GPP pitcher at best, but I also do like Cincinnati as a GPP bat tournament team. But again, we'll talk about the bats when we get there. In terms of the cheap guys, Priester and Ray, they're like the only two that I have any interest in. Sandoval and Maeda, they're both in the fade no interest category along with these guys. And Priester, I think, is really the only one. Even Ray, I could see him sending him over into the no interest category. But again, Priester, nice matchup against Oakland. We like playing pitchers in that ballpark as well. Nice big, foul territory. Nice big, pretty much everything. Just it's a great pitcher's park, in my opinion. So, Priester, nice spot there at 7.2K. Could be a nice pivot to get off of the super chalk of Ober, which is going to be down in this salary tier. The rest of these guys, I know I said like they're all fades, and like they kind of are. Like there's just not strikeout upside really with any of these guys. Maybe Hancock. Maybe, but he's got a brutal matchup facing off against Atlanta. Mikolas, he doesn't strike anybody out. Stripling doesn't strike anybody out. Flexen, no. So that's kind of where the pitching lands. I'm definitely going to be sticking towards like the higher tier here. Wheeler, Sale, Ober, like those are your top three. Lugo, I think, is a great tournament shot with his strikeout upside. Let's just take a look here. What's his strikeout rate so far this season? We had one dominant one at 9, not so great after that, but still, he's shown that it can be there. We've seen it in the past as well. Yeah. All right, heading over towards the bats. I mentioned already, Minnesota is going to be the cheap team that we're going to be targeting. Once again, it's kind of frustrating, but it is what it is, and their salaries have started to tick up a little bit, which is good. We don't want those like super dirt cheap teams that, bats get so popular and it's just, the slate's just not as fun in my opinion. So, but we're going to go with Julien, Larnack. I feel like these would be the first two guys that I would be putting into any twin stack that you are doing. Larnack is just absolutely a monster against right-handed pitching, and he's only 3.8K. Just way too cheap. Some other guys that you could be putting into your lineup as well. Willie Castro, he's done very well so far this season. Santana. The issue with like Castro and Santana is they are batting a little bit farther down into the lineup. But I feel like this would be like the starting 4. Maybe after that, you can go to a guy like Kurloff, Jeffers. I really don't have any interest in Correa and Buxton at those price tags and the matchup that they're going to be in. So Minnesota is probably going to be the value. I mean, it's not even a whole lot of value. Even just putting in those guys, you only went up a couple of hundred, but you're at 4.2K remaining for the rest of your bats. Other cheap teams that I did mention are going to be Pittsburgh and Detroit. Guys like Suwinski in the outfield for Pittsburgh, going to be batting in the heart of the order. Nice lefty-righty matchup against a guy who can't strike anybody out. I know I said I don't really like targeting, bats in Oakland, but regardless, I feel like he's cheap enough and a nice enough matchup. O'Neal Cruz, what a disappointment so far he has been all season long, but we all know that he mashes right-handed pitching over the course of his career, so maybe he sees some lower ownership, and maybe Pittsburgh all of a sudden becomes, instead of going to Minnesota and all that ownership there, maybe we pivot over to Pittsburgh. And, you know, they have very, very similar price points in like all of their salaries between that like 3.3 to 4.5K range. That's what Pittsburgh or Minnesota is. Let's see. Yeah, look at this. They just kind of like alternate all the way down just because they are so evenly priced. As a secondary stack, I kind of like Pittsburgh there as a nice GPP play. Detroit as well, facing off against Mikolas. Mikolas just can't strike anybody out. He just can't. Some top teams. It's going to be Philadelphia. It's going to be Atlanta. And then I had to like hold my stomach like as I put St. Louis as a potential top team for bats. We all know who the top bats are for Philadelphia and Atlanta. I don't really feel like I have to go and talk about them too much. Looking over at St. Louis there, facing off against Maeda. Let's see. I'm trying to recall who had the best numbers against right-handed pitching. Mason Wynn, he was up there. He's cheap at 3.1K, so maybe don't go Castro. Maybe go with Wynn instead. Burleson, he's going to have a nice lefty-righty matchup. He's super cheap. He was another guy who was also kind of in that top against, you know, better numbers against right-handed pitching for the St. Louis team. Arenado, he was up there. Man, like it's almost like you just gotta like close your eyes as you're clicking through this St. Louis team because it's just it's been so bad offensively for them. But they are facing off against Maeda, and again, I don't have any interest in him whatsoever. He's not striking anybody out. He's gonna allow a handful of runs in my opinion here. So I do like St. Louis. And then in terms of GPP tournaments, Cincinnati, they're going to be up at the top here, facing off against Musgrove. I mentioned that Musgrove has really struggled with the long ball so far this season. Cincinnati, they got a lot of pop in their bats. And even if they're getting on base, you know, they got that stolen base upside as well. And then next thing you know, they're correlating fantastically with one another. Dale Cruz, he's going to be your obvious first guy in. One cheaper, they got injuries that we do have to be paying attention to with their lineup. I got a couple guys on the day-to-day. Stevenson is one of those guys, and Stevenson's actually one of the better hitters so far this season in terms of numbers on the Cincinnati team facing off against right-handed pitching. So if it is going to be Stevenson, I would probably encourage you and myself, if you are going with Cincinnati as your top GPP play, to be putting him into your big main stack. Dela Cruz, Steer, for sure, by those three guys. Fraley, he is like ice cold right now. He can't hit anybody, but still we know what he is capable of against right-handed pitching as a nice lefty-righty matchup. So maybe he gets into the lineup. Probably not, though. I don't know. He's back. He's back. Yeah, he was back because he was injured or with the illness. So Cincinnati are going to be my top team. We know what what power they have in terms of capabilities and all that stuff. And yeah, that's kind of where I rank everything out. So if you want to come join us here at FSi DFS, the links are down in the description below. You can see we do have like this core sheet that we do use. We cover FanDuel, cash and GPP cores. We got my cash core here, Matt Manoa, his GPP on DraftKings. We cover the showdowns, tiers, talk about weather, and all that stuff. If you have any questions, just comment down below. Come join us in our Discord as well. We'd love to have you. So hopefully this was helpful. Again, Mega Ruler has the night slate covered, so go ahead in a separate video, check him out. And yeah, good luck in your contest as always, and we'll see you in the next one.